Ferguson when Obama was in office. Antifa has been raging in Portland. This week they've been raging. But you didn't even know that. And remember Auntie Maxine urging people to confront Trump allies in public places and push them out? Remember all those viral videos of Trump staffers getting harassed in restaurants? Did Joe Biden call off those mobs? Soon the Democrat establishment will have all the power, all the government under their control once again. And they have piles of big money and from big donors. And of course they have the help from big tech to support their candidates and squelch speech going forward. They have a pliant media to carry their message. So let's see what they can do with all of that power. Now, recent history shows that the establishment basically has 5 major problems. Number 1, they're stupid. This isn't the establishment of John Kennedy having dinner with dozens of Nobel Prize winners. These days, establishment types spend a lot more time working out than reading books. Their knowledge of Thomas Jefferson comes from the play Hamilton. Their knowledge of Middle America comes from watching Roseanne reruns. Their knowledge of China and the CCP comes from pro-China forces.
Xi Jinping is not a dictator.
He's not a dictator?
No, he has a constituency to answer to.
As an investor in China, you kind of slow down for 4 or 5 years until you see the lay of the land, or
So we're all in,
Yep.
and so we're not slowing down.
The rising China is a positive development, not only for the people of China, but for the United States and...
No wonder they don't want to debate the issues. Are those re-education camps a problem, Jamie? Number 2, they're incompetent. They told us that NAFTA was a good trade deal and that letting China into the WTO would lead to liberalization.
It represents the most significant opportunity that we have had to create positive change in China since the 1970s.
Wrong. They told us that we would be greeted as liberators in the Middle East.
We're liberating power, as nations in Europe and Asia can attest as well.
They told us that President Trump could never beat Hillary Clinton.
This man has got some momentum, and we better be ready for the fact that he might be leading the Republican ticket next. I know you don't believe that.
Wrong. They didn't foresee the rise of China. They didn't foresee the housing bubble, the housing crisis, the internet bubble, the rise of populism, Brexit, or the harmful effects of government lockdowns. They've been wrong over and over and over again on almost every major issue. And if they want to be successful, they have to start holding themselves accountable for their mistakes. Number 3, they're corrupt. Jefferson died on the verge of bankruptcy. Hamilton died leaving behind huge debts. Well, those days are gone. The plan these days is to come to D.C., do the people's business for a while, and then cash in.
The filings show the Clintons made a combined $10.7 million last year, far less than the $28 million they made the year before.
The Obamas have struck deals with Netflix to lend their names and help develop documentaries and television shows, with Spotify on the podcasting front, and of course the Obamas both had book deals.
If the establishment wants to be respected, they need to spend more time thinking about America's bottom line and less time thinking about their own. Number 4, they're cowards. Their immediate response to any challenge is to try to ban the challenger, whether it's from the cocktail circuit, from the club, from the airwaves, and as we've seen this week, even from Twitter and Facebook. And their answer to almost every problem involves using more troops to, fight people overseas, or more restrictions and surveillance to limit folks here at home. If they want to make a difference, they should try harder to win on the merits and stop focusing on trying to silence their enemies. And number 5, they despise the working class. And it's not just their views that they hate, it's the people themselves.
Trump has been a disaster, but what I worry about even more is that something like 74 million people voted for him.
there's going to be a reckoning.
The rest of the country that has enabled him is what we really need to work to fix. We need.
I believe they have blood on their hands, and no one should forget that.
Of course, this disdain comes from the media, too. ABC News political director Rick Klein writing this week, getting rid of Trump is the easy part. Cleansing the movement he commands, or getting rid of what he represents to so many Americans, is going to be something else. Well, ABC later stealth edited that piece. It now reads, cleaning up the movement. But we already know Klein's truth, though. The establishment's goal, of course, is to tar every Trump supporter as a violent marauder or a second-class citizen. So if you went to the Ellipse on Wednesday and walked to the Capitol and were peaceful, didn't enter the building, you're still an enemy combatant. How sick and how poisonous. It's as toxic as what the mob did inside the U.S. Capitol.
Anybody's to blame, it's all of us. You know, the media's to blame, the right and the left is to blame. But at the end of the day, we're all responsible for our own actions.
Congressman, I don't think you saw the media encouraging those monsters yesterday.
The fact is, the media never bothered to understand Trump supporters. Instead, they agreed with Hillary that they were deplorable and irredeemable. And thus, they've never even attempted to understand them, to even really talk to them, and to be objective. That ended up driving more people to Trump and fed public frustration and even anger. Where were Stephanopoulos and Tapper and Blitzer when leftists occupied the Wisconsin state capitol back in 2011? Or during the repeated assaults on the federal courthouse over the summer? Where was the Democrat establishment? This is how Democrats condemn the BLM riots.
The protesters aren't mobs. They're mothers and veterans and mayors.
We've seen mothers and we've seen veterans who are peacefully protesting, not threatening the federal courthouse, beaten and gassed.
The vast majority of protesters are peaceful.
There are some people who have strong feelings.
Well, note to self, only BLM and Antifa are allowed to have strong feelings and create mayhem. Look, governing is really hard. You have to actually care about the people you serve, though, all of them. Trump ended up growing his support among minority groups because his policies work for them. Not just for the tech barons in Wall Street, they got really rich, but it worked for everybody. The establishment types, Biden and his team, Republicans like Romney and Murkowski, they should be spending their time figuring out how to avoid all the mistakes that drove middle-class voters away in the first place. That will require accepting the fact that the vast majority of people who voted for Trump did so not because they wanted to storm the Capitol. They did so because they love their country. The political violence and unrest of the past year cannot be tolerated and must be prosecuted. And if government tacitly supports one group's actions over another's, it's only going to guarantee more unhappy voters. And then, who's the establishment going to blame? And that's the angle. Joining me now is Dinesh D'Souza, conservative author.